This is the Parent, Teacher, and Community Member Workshop number 1. Everyone has a gift and it can be developed. Understanding and nurturing mathematically promising students from underrepresented groups. This presentation will begin with an overview of the presentation. A community building activity. Next, we'll discuss what does it mean to be gifted. Then we'll discuss gifted Indigenous students. We'll then discuss developing gifted talents and conclude with a wrap-up. Overview. Welcome to the first parent workshop. This session will focus on children who are gifted in mathematics. The outcomes for this presentation are 1. Define what it means to be a gifted student and gifted in mathematics. 2. Understand why and how to identify gifted students. And 3. Recognize the importance of nurturing gifted students and the need for developing their mathematical talent through gifted education. In this part of the presentation, we will do a community building activity. Community building newspaper scavenger hunt. Participants realize that math is everywhere by looking through a local newspaper. Let's get to know each other by playing a game. How to play. You will work in small groups. Each group will receive one newspaper. The newspapers are identical. A member of your team will come up to see an image of an ad or short article. That team member will return to your teams and describe the image. As a group, you must work together to search through the different sections of the newspaper to find the image. When you find the image, rip it out of the newspaper and bring it back to the facilitator. The first group to bring up the correct image is awarded 1 point. Group discussion. How easy or difficult was this activity? What kind of strategies did you use? What did you learn about communicating with others? How is math used in the ads or articles we found? In this part of the presentation, we will discuss what does it mean to be gifted. Questions to consider. What do you think a gifted student is? What images come to mind when you think of gifted students? Or what words come to mind when you think of gifted students? Example, who is gifted? This is Ms. Maera's 4th grade language arts class in a Title I school. Which students look like gifted students? Look at the student at the lower left corner of this picture. Kaliko is bored, daydreaming, not engaged in the class. She makes careless mistakes, doesn't complete tasks in time, and doesn't turn in homework in time. Her reading level is 2nd grade. In a math class as well, her attitudes and work habits don't look different, though she meets the proficiency level in a state math test. Do you think Kaliko is gifted? Does Kaliko demonstrate characteristics you would ascribe to a gifted student? If you were Kaliko's language arts teacher, would you think she is a gifted student based on this behavior? When she goes back to school, do you think her school teacher recognizes her giftedness and recommends her to a gifted math program, if any? The teacher may feel resentful to place Kaliko into a gifted program. The teacher may ask why this uncooperative, seemingly unmotivated student should be in a gifted program, while students who are more task-committed, better-mannered, and clearly superior students look more deserving of a gifted program. Would her parents know her giftedness if she didn't participate in the summer camp? As you see from Kaliko's case, gifted students are not necessarily to be high achievers in all areas, and their talents can be recognized during an outside-of-school activity. The better students in Ms. Maera's class seem more deserving of a special program, but they may not need one. They may be working up to the level of their potential in the regular classroom, and the regular curriculum meets their educational needs. Kaliko, who seems to be far from an ideal student, may be floundering even in a regular math classroom because the work assigned there is too easy, too slow-paced, and not responsive to her need to grow intellectually. From a special education viewpoint, Kaliko is the student who needs a special math program. Whether or not he or she appears to be deserving of the program is irrelevant. Developing and nurturing gifted students. Is there a need? Why should we focus on developing and nurturing the talents of gifted students? Aren't they already gifted? Shouldn't we spend more time on those students who are not gifted? If they are so gifted, then why do they need our help? Many incorrectly assume that because a student is gifted, she or he will excel on their own. Let's take a look at what many people say about gifted students. Myth number 1. Gifted students don't need help. They will do fine on their own. Do you believe this is so too? Here is a response to this notion from the National Association for Gifted Children, or NAGC. Would you send a star athlete to train for the Olympics without a coach? Gifted students need guidance from well-trained teachers who challenge and support them in order to fully develop their abilities. Many gifted students may be so far ahead of their same age peers that they know more than half of the grade level curriculum before the school year begins. Their resulting boredom and frustration can lead to low achievement, despondency, or unhealthy work habits. The role of the teacher is crucial for spotting and nurturing talents in school. Myth number 2. Teachers challenge all the students, so gifted students will be fine in their regular classroom. Here is the response from NAGC. Although teachers try to challenge all students, they are frequently unfamiliar with the needs of gifted children and do not know how to best serve them in the classroom. A national study conducted by the Fordham Institute found that 58% of teachers have received no professional development focused on teaching academically advanced students in the past few years, and 73% of teachers agreed that too often the brightest students are bored and under-challenged in school. We're not giving them a sufficient chance to thrive. This report confirms what many families have known. Not all teachers are able to recognize and support gifted learners. Myth number 3. That student can't be gifted. He is receiving poor grades. NAGC responds to the notion as follows. Underachievement describes a discrepancy between a student's performance and his actual ability. The roots of this problem differ based on each child's experiences. Gifted students may become bored or frustrated in an unchallenging classroom situation, causing them to lose interest, learn bad study habits, or distrust the school environment. Other students may mask their abilities to try to fit in socially with their same age peers, and still others may have a learning disability that masks their giftedness. No matter the cause, it is imperative that a caring and perceptive adult help gifted learners break the cycle of underachievement in order to achieve their full potential. Who is gifted? How can we define giftedness? How is gifted defined? Defining gifted is a central and practical undertaking affecting each component of the gifted education programming and the lives of real students. The word gifted is used variously by people in a different contexts and at different times. There are multiple words indicating gifted individuals, such as genius, brilliant, excellent, outstanding, eminent, expert, precocious, prodigy, talented, etc. Most people would informally define giftedness in terms of intellectual abilities. However, the field of gifted education has produced a multiplicity of formal definitions, nearly all of which go well beyond the simple equating of giftedness with scholastic aptitude or IQ. Giftedness is a social construct, not a thing or a reality to discover. It does not mean that giftedness does not exist. It means that it exists not in a single form, but in multiple forms. Giftedness is multidimensional, assessed in multiple ways with multiple sources, and determined by interaction of environment and genetics. Federal definition. To understand gifted education within the purview of public education, we need to take a look at the federal and state definitions. The federal definition of giftedness has been revised slightly since its first appearance in the Marlin Report 1972, and the current definition of gifted students is as follows. A gifted student should show evidence of high achievement capability. Here, how to find the evidence is an issue, and here measurement and psychometrics are employed to determine high achievement capability. The areas federally recognized include intellectual, creative, artistic, or leadership capacity, or in specific academic fields. The areas in which giftedness is recognized in have changed. In the initial federal definition, psychomotor ability was included but excluded in subsequent versions. For the exceptional capacity in such an area, the student's educational needs are not met by ordinary school services and activities. Thus, the student should need special educational provisions. The State of Hawaii definition. It is not required to use the federal definition of giftedness, so states and districts can have different definitions. The State of Hawaii defines gifted students as follows. Gifted and talented children means students residing in the state who are of compulsory school age and are enrolled in and attending a public school, and whose superior performance or potential ability or talent may occur singly or in combination with any of the following areas: intellectual, creative or specific academic abilities, leadership capabilities, psychomotor abilities, or abilities in the performing or visual arts. Compared to the federal definition, other areas are same, but the state definition includes psychomotor abilities. The domain includes physical movement, coordination, and use of motor skills, the ability to use sensory cues to guide motor activity, mental, physical, and emotional readiness to act, speedy and accurate performance, modifying movement patterns to fit special requirements, and creating new movement patterns. The State of Arizona definition. Arizona State defines gifted students as follows. Gifted pupil means a child who is of lawful school age, who due to superior intellect or advanced learning ability or both, is not afforded an opportunity for otherwise attainable progress and development in regular classroom instruction, and who needs appropriate gifted education services to achieve at levels commensurate with the student's intellect and ability. It emphasizes special educational needs for students to be eligible for gifted education. CNMI public school system doesn't provide a clear definition of gifted students in education, though it does recognize a few gifted or enrichment programs such as Upward Bound and Close Up, Math Counts, and Academic Challenge Bowl. Project Beam Kapilina no Eo definition. We intentionally use the term promising instead of the conventional labels such as gifted or talented to broaden the participation of underrepresented groups of students. In identifying promising students as attending to the pragmatic and moral aspect, rather than using the scientific imperial criteria for judging giftedness, this project aims to understand how Indigenous and Hispanic students have potential in math and what their needs are to fulfill the potential. Mathematically promising in this project is defined by the advanced level of math achievement, outstanding real-world math application skills, enrollment in a gifted math program or club in middle school, completion of advanced math classes in middle school, and entering into high school STEM honors certificate program. How do we know a student is gifted? Identification. Identifying gifted students for a program can be the most difficult, the most controversial, and certainly the most thankless task. We can often see discomfort, puzzlement, concerns, and resistance in the process. Then what is the true purpose of identification? It is for placing students in appropriate programs as described in the program target population, not for labeling students. For existing school records, school-related issues, developmental factors, interpersonal skills, and attitude and support from the student's family. For academic ability, a former measure of intelligence, either group-administered or individually administered, is used. For achievement tests, both grade level and above grade level testing are used. Yet grade level test results are a must, but above grade level testing results are not required. For creativity, creative personality and divergent thinking skills can be measured, and creative past and current activities and products are recorded. After collecting information, we need to combine the results and make decisions on the student's educational placement and planning. Many educators prefer to use the Iowa Acceleration Scale or the Baldwin Identification Matrix to reduce the data into a single index. Then the index is used to rank students from highest to lowest for screening. However, other researchers argue against the use of matrices for several reasons. One, the final index is conceptually and psychometrically uninterpretable. For instance, a student's final index score is 45. What does this number mean? When it is compared to another student's final index score of 50, of what quantity would this be an increment of 5? In a matrix, one is asked to add up all the data such as IQ, achievement tests, teacher nomination forms, peer nominations, etc., which are sometimes weighed differently. What is the result? The sum cannot be interpreted. Moreover, meaningful information for identification is lost. Those who have the same index score do not have equal profiles. 3. The information considered in the matrix may not be relevant to the definition of the target population by a school or school district. Instead, educators should look at each score and rating individually and place into the candidate pool any student who reaches a cutoff on a single instrument. This is preferable because screening involves the search for any likely candidate, whether that student reveals himself or herself on tests, grades, ratings, or products. Especially when the student body is diverse in terms of ethnicity, culture, social class, or language used at home, it is necessary to look at profiles, not global indexes. Project BEAM Kapilina Noeo Identification, Non-Traditional Approach. 7th or 8th grade students with potential in mathematics identified by a two-step procedure. Number 1. Native Hawaiian, Native American, Pacific Islander, or Hispanic 7th or 8th grade who have received an A or B in a math course prior to his or her algebra course. Number 2. To the pool of students who meet the first criterion, administer the Multiple Intelligences Developmental Assessment Scales, or MIDAS, to students. Scales of Identifying Gifted Students, Home Scale to parents, and SIG School Scale to math teachers. Students rated to have a high potential aptitude and interest in many math in any of the 3 surveys will be invited. What are the characteristics of mathematically gifted students? Characteristics: is eager to solve challenging math problems, A problem is defined as a task for which the solution is not known in advance. Organizes data and information to discover mathematical patterns. Enjoys challenging math puzzles, games, and logic problems. Understands new math concepts and processes more easily than other students. Has creative, unusual, and divergent ways of solving math problems. Displays a strong number sense. For example, makes sense of large and small numbers, estimates easily and appropriately. Characteristics continued. Frequently solves math problems abstractly without the need for manipulatives or concrete materials. Has an interest in analyzing the mathematical structure of a problem. When solving a math problem, can switch strategies easily if appropriate or necessary. Regularly uses a variety of representations to explain math concepts, such as written explanations, pictorial, graphic, equations, etc. What educational needs do mathematically gifted students have? Needs of mathematically gifted students neglected in a regular classroom. Oftentimes, regular curriculum is insufficient in depth, breadth, and pace to meet the needs of the gifted. Most teachers make only a few minor curriculum and instructional modifications for mathematically gifted students. The current emphasis on standardized testing exacerbates the condition. Schools focus on basic skills instruction and drill to assure that all students will meet a certain proficiency level on these tests, believing that gifted students would take care of themselves. The U.S. standard curriculum teaches many subjects considerably later than in other countries. For instance, algebra and geometry are most often taught at grades 9 and 10 in the U.S., 2 years later than for students in Japan, Singapore, Ireland, and Canada. Only 1 to 2% of U.S. students take algebra in grade 7 or 8. In this part of the presentation, we will discuss gifted Indigenous students. What educational needs do mathematically gifted students from Indigenous and Hispanic groups have? Underrepresentation of Indigenous and Hispanic students in gifted education. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, while about 7.6% of white and 13% of Asian students were enrolled in gifted education, only 4.6% of Hispanic and 5.2% of Native American Alaskan Native students were enrolled in such programs. The percent of Native Hawaiians was not reported, and the number of Pacific Islanders was reported with Asian students, despite different characteristics and outcomes for the two groups. In Hawaii, while Native Hawaiians and Pacific Island students consist of 32% of total student enrollment, only 18.2% of students in gifted programs are Native Hawaiians or Pacific Islanders. In Winslow Unified District, Arizona, adjacent to the Diné Navajo Nation, where 22% of total students enrolled is Hispanic and 53% is Native American, only 2% of Native American or Alaskan Native students and 4.3% of Hispanic students are enrolled in gifted education, contrasted with percents of whites, which is 9.2%, and Asians, which is 8.3%. The percent of CNMI students enrolled in gifted education is not available in the government report, but CNMI public school system recognizes a few gifted or enrichment programs. Reasons for underrepresentation. Identification-related issues. Many schools emphasize aptitude or test scores, oftentimes culturally biased, and overly rely on IQ scores rather than multiple criteria. Teacher-related issues. lack of cultural competence, math content knowledge, and teaching experiences of teachers, lack of role models, and lack of mentors. Culture-related issues. Many Indigenous and Hispanic students are raised with a cultural norm to feel it is unseemly for an individual to draw too much attention to oneself. This norm calls for one to be humble and not show off one's abilities. That cultural environment discourages them to actively demonstrate their excellence in the classroom activities, which can negatively affect teacher nomination. Even if identified, they often leave the program for the lack of cultural peers and culturally competent teachers. They do not feel belong and feel lack of appropriate support. How Project Beam Kapilina No'eo addresses these issues. Identification-related issues. We use a two-step approach using multiple criteria, not a sole criterion or intelligence test. Teacher-related issues. We recruit highly qualified teacher or college mentors who have cultural competence, content knowledge, teaching experience, and can serve as a role model and mentor. They are trained on the needs of target students and evidence-based strategies. Culture-related issues. We provide an opportunity to work with cultural peers, sharing the same interests and similar math ability, and culturally competent, qualified, and experienced mentors. The lessons are also based on their own ethnic, local, and teenage cultures, and are taught in a culturally responsive way. As respecting cultural values, pursuing communal goals, and helping others, we guide students to work in a small group to solve a real-world problem and present it to a wider audience. Issues of lack of school funding. We provide an access to gifted education and challenging, high-quality math education for free. Our Saturday sessions are held at a college campus for early exposure to college life and resources available on campus, such as field trip to a lab. In this part of the presentation, we will discuss developing gifted talents. Can giftedness be developed? Competing mindsets. Giftedness can be developed according to many research in gifted education. According to Carol Dweck, there are two mindsets about people's belief on their own potential: growth mindset and fixed mindset. People with growth mindset believe that talents can be developed over time and great abilities can be built over time. They believe that mistakes are opportunities to develop. They are resilient. They believe that effort creates success, and they believe in thinking about how we learn. People with a fixed mindset believe that talent alone creates success, are reluctant to take on challenges, prefer to stay in a comfort zone, are fearful of making mistakes, believe it is important to look smart in front of others, and believe that talents and abilities are set in stone. You either have them or not. About 40% of students have a growth mindset, another 40% have damaging fixed mindset, and 20% waver between the two. We promote students to build a growth mindset, overcoming the fixed mindset. Students with growth mindset show the following characteristics. How can we nurture the mathematical talent? In Project Beam Kapilina No'eo, we build a mathematical mindset community. In this community, teachers and students believe everyone can learn math at high levels. Communication and connections are valued. The math is visual. The math is open. The environment is filled with wonder and curiosity. The classroom is a risk-taking, mistake-valuing environment. We will also promote a mathematical growth mindset as praising effort and strategies, formative comments that emphasize effort and application, building robust self-confidence, spending time developing intelligence and ability, giving students a strong voice in the learning process and a sense of purpose, providing constructive criticism, and placing importance on learning rather than grades and levels. This is opposed to the fixed mindset, which praises students for being smart, provides formative comments that emphasize achievement, praises students for achievements that come easily, spends time documenting intelligence and ability, directs students to which tasks to complete, and places importance on grade levels rather than learning. Multiple evidence-based teaching strategies of Project Beam Kapilina no Eo. Culturally responsive teaching and ethnomathematics. Blended learning. Universal design for learning. Contextual problem-based learning. These 4 strategies will be covered in the next sessions. Differentiated instruction. Mathematically promising students are not a homogeneous group. Among the identified students, they can have different levels of understanding and skills. To address this, for each hands-on activity based on a pretest, students will learn different levels of math concepts while still doing the same activity in an inclusive classroom environment. Math project development based on Renzulli's enrichment triad model. Project Beam Kapilina no Eo students will also develop a math project in a small group or alone. The process follows Renzulli's enrichment triad model. As you see in the picture, the model includes 3 types of enrichment. Type 1 enrichment. General exploratory activities to expose students to a wide variety of disciplines, topics, occupations, hobbies, persons, places, and events that would not ordinarily be covered in the regular curriculum. In this stage, Project Beam Kapilina no Eo students will be guided to explore and choose a real-world issue and related problems of interest. Type 2 enrichment. Group training activities to promote the development of problem thinking, such as creative thinking, problem solving and critical thinking, and feeling processes. At this stage, students will be guided to learn and apply problem-solving skills while they continuously build algebra skills. Type 3 enrichment. Individual and small group investigation of real problems. Type 3 enrichment is usually more appropriate for students with higher levels of ability, interest, and task commitment for advanced content acquisition and process training, that is, talent pool students. At this stage, students will be guided to develop their own real-life problem-solving project as applying mathematical procedures and thinking. They will present their own projects in their own preferred expression style. The student showcase will be held in the last day of the project. We hope that many mentors, family members, community members will come to the event and celebrate their achievement together. We will conclude this presentation with a wrap-up. Thank you for viewing this presentation on gifted education. Our next workshop is on culturally responsive teaching, Math and My Culture, a culturally responsive approach to teaching math.